Uh-huh.
Okay, sister, so we're good to go. So, Guz, if you want to do the opening prayer, you're good to go.
Not home yet.
Dear Heavenly Father, we ask for your blessings. We ask that you bless our hearts and minds to understand the lesson that is being presented this evening. In your name, may you bless each and every one, and so be it.
And so it is.
Hey, Mar.
Hey, everyone.
I don't know how this is going to work.
Can you you know how to do the screen share?
No, Kiki's going to do this. No, only because I couldn't.
I can share the screen, sister, if you need me to.
Oh, I do need you to.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Am I starting now? Yay.
Yes.
Okay, so
Ooh.
the topic for today, of course, is humility and pride. But so just to let you know, I did like 4 pages of notes. So I have a lot of information, but I have to cut it back. So my title is Pride, Humility, and Choices. And then you'll understand why I put the choices. Okay. So, am I reading them? Okay, let's see. Sermon on the Mount. And seeing the multitudes, he went up into a mountain, and when he was set, his disciples came unto him, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. So, let's see here. One of the things for the blessed is the poor in spirit, what I find is that, of course, God didn't mean that people weren't, I guess, didn't have intelligence, is what it is. He simply meant that simplicity of heart and humility of your spirit. So it's very simple, as I see that is the sentence, the words, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. And I suspect there could be different interpretations, but that's what I came away with. And unless anybody wants to chime in and add to that.
Just be humble.
Yeah. Yeah. And God wasn't trying to, put anyone down or just be humble, like you said. So, okay. Next. Oh, there it is. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. So many were confused about whom Jesus had in mind when he referred to the poor in spirit. He did not mean to imply that they were unintelligent. Jesus meant to say that in order to enter spiritual life on good terms, a person must cultivate simplicity of heart and humility of spirit, which makes sense. He also wanted to make it very clear that as long as a person has just 2 special qualities, which is simplicity and humility, that person, even an ignorant one, has a better chance to do well and prosper in the spirit world than a knowledgeable individual who thinks oneself cleverer than God. Can you imagine that? This teaching of Jesus is the consequence of the principle of humility, which he unceasingly presents as the essential condition for happiness. If Jesus promised that the poor and lowly will be admitted into the kingdom of heaven, it is because wealth and power too often fuel pride, whereas an obscure and laborious life is far more likely to be conducive to moral progress. And one of the things in doing this, it's really clear that the humility and pride are complete, I want to say, opposites. They're polarized. So anyway, go ahead. Thank you. It says, so the 13 virtues, let me see in my notes I put. The 13 virtues that are here, conscious that had character, needed improvement. Benjamin Franklin set about to task of writing a list of virtues. He contrived a written plan, and in this plan, he identified the virtues he thought were important. His advice to achieve humility is so simple, yet so profound. So humility, imitate Jesus and Socrates. In reality, there is perhaps no one of our natural passions so hard to subdue as pride. Disguise it, struggle with it, beat it down, stifle it, mortify it as much as one pleases. It is still alive and will every now and then peep out and show itself. You will see it perhaps often in his history, for even if I could conceive that I had completely overcome it, I should probably be proud of my humility. So one of the 13 virtues that consisted or included in his list were temperance, silence, order, resolution, frugality, industry, sincerity, justice, moderation, cleanliness, tranquility, chastity, humility. And that was the virtue that he struggled with the most, was humility. So let's see. All right, Miss Kiki. So, generally speaking, in our world, knowledgeable men and women consider themselves to be Eaterite, which that means that we have to show of great knowledge or great learning. That believing in God or anything spiritual, for that matter, lowers their position. And as you can see, it says the time, what science tells us about God and science, which I think we've all seen that in the magazines and what have you, that science is proof, and God, there's no quote unquote proof of God because you can't see him. So that in and of itself for me is that the spirituality portion of it doesn't matter. And if you believe in it, then, science is larger than what your beliefs are. So,
The fascinating thing about that, to me, is that when these guys go out after God to try and say that he doesn't exist, it just proves that God is on their mind and they are on a quest. I was watching the other day on HBO for a little bit, his name is Bill Maher or something like that.
Yeah.
He went around the state trying to prove going, but the problem was that he kept going to different churches. And after a while, I just kind of got bored with it, but I don't know if he ended up going to any spiritist or even a medium or anyone to help boost his curiosity even further. I don't know. But all he kept saying was that there was really no proof of there ever being a Jesus or God, that God exists.
I wanted to add to that. I watched a program too. It was called Afterlife. And they went around interviewing people who, if they believed in an afterlife. Mm-hmm. And there was a piece that had near-death experiences on there, which they actually described in, hovering over their body. And so those people they interviewed said that their life had completely changed because they got another chance. Mm-hmm. And that they were not afraid to die because they knew what was awaiting them. So they did the light, and I saw my grandma, those sort of things. And I thought it was really interesting, and it was very, there was a lot of compassion in those people. Anyway, it's called Afterlife. What I wanted to add also to is between God and science, I think that the science portion of it and the fear, I put my notes where it's made up of fear, anxiety, self-reliance, and this is all pride, obviously, self-reliance, lack of faith, entitlement, insecurity, and looking down upon others because you're prideful. So anyway, I'm not going to read all my notes because it's a lot of them. Okay, Kiki. It says, in fact, some go as far as to believe themselves as all-knowing that they can deny the existence of God. Oh, they're so all-knowing that they can deny the existence of God because anything in this world can be explained by their sciences without recourse to God. And that's just what we were talking about. You can, let's see. Pride is also the originator of sufferings beyond the grave. Spiritism shows us that those who occupy highly important positions in earthly life often find themselves in sharply reduced circumstances in the spirit world. On the other hand, many who did not have important positions on earth, but spent time in the cultivating spiritual virtues, find themselves occupying very comfortable positions there. By the same token, Spiritism demonstrates the fact that some people who are dominated by pride and ambition, when they held influential positions in a particular earthly life, end up having to live in humbling circumstances during a future incarnation. A little thought and wisdom can preserve us from these tribulations. And I see this, I think all of us do more often than not. And I think also, I could be wrong, but we have a very individualistic culture. So I think that, oops, sorry.
And I also think that our culture kinds of teach us to compete. We are always trying to be better, to do better. And that just leads us to think that if we are not good enough, we will not deserve whatever merit or whatever benefit we have. So we, to your point, Sonia, I think that we learn to be prideful and to do stuff that are really good since very early
Early
age.
age. Yeah.
Like,
And
right, like
you're
when
right.
you're a kid. I remember clearly having experienced some things like, oh, your toy is bigger than your friend's toy, you can just play with yours, trying to teach the kid to be satisfied with his or her toy. And it's like, it's not because your toy is bigger, it's just because this is your toy. And we teach wrong since the very beginning.
Yeah, we get shaped when we're little. Actually, I'm looking some of the some of my notes I have here. Like I said, I have a lot of them, but it says if you are not connected to pride and humility, then when I am not willing to be humble, then I will have some hint of pride. Be aware of your unconsciousness and stay connected to others. And it's connected with shame, fear of pride, leading to dishonesty, disconnection versus feeling connected and not certain of yourself, attempting to prove others that are wrong, and also attempting to convince your own self. And of course, it says you can also go into truth. You have to be honest with yourself, being reinforced to humility and connection with your own experiences. Connect with self and connect with others. And you have the free will to choose from our learning. And that's obviously the humility portion of it. And it says also, destruction of pride, how to preclude us to be able to connect with ourselves and others and to God. Fear and anxiety create fear, obviously, therefore pride, and then wishing and needing to prove to others that they are wrong, identifying their errors and making sure that they see their errors, versus being humble and acknowledging that we have defects and need God to help us in our imperfections. So that was connected to the both, obviously the pride and anxiety. Pride and humility.
But I wanted to ask Kiki, were you trying to say that the parents always push the child to be competitive, and that's where how it's kind of starts. You've got to be better than that. You got to be better. You got to, and always pushing to,
One up.
yeah. And, but here's the thing, it's so, everybody lives on the material level. And so if the spiritual stuff isn't taught at an early age, then the material, this spiritual side is, it just comes in third, fourth place. They don't get it. They don't have any thought towards, well, if I die, this is where I'm going, to the dark side, or I'm going to be, everybody thinks there's this utopian world that they're going to be blessed with because they no longer have the physical body, with no effort, no changing. And so, and you have this one picture here where the guy is in the dark side because of his way of thinking and behaving in life. But I think that's the saddest part of it all, is that it's not accepted throughout the world,
And also, sister, I think that by doing this, we teach our kids that the point of reference is to be better than the other. It's not to be better than yourself. And this is huge, because you just put on the other the view that I need to be better. So then, like, we learn to do better and to be better than the other person rather than being better than ourselves from yesterday or things like that. And today I read a statement that made so much sense for me. It's from a guy named Simon Sinek, and he's kind of a coach. And he said, whenever you go to a big library or any bookstore, usually you find a big aisle with self-help.
That's true.
Which in reality, we should find help others.
Yeah.
We don't find that. So we learn to be competitive, having the point of reference in another person. So we lose sight of how better we can be. But at the same time, we do not, we have to learn how to help ourselves, because we also don't know how to help others.
You know what I wanted to add, what you were saying, is that I know growing up, my parents are from Mexico, but I know growing up, we were constantly reminded of, coming here for a better life, if you will, and what that meant. So I've always considered myself obviously bicultural, but I've always lived in two worlds, and I still do. And it took me a while to figure that out and to adjust appropriately, and not, you would be amazed how people are not just judgmental, but how can I say, even in school, everything that you show up, and it's, I want to say, like, proving that you're good enough to be where you are because you're quote unquote different. And I learned that being different 5 years old, because I didn't speak English. So I think you're right. You start getting shaped from the time that, but obviously parents believe that that's the best thing for their child, whether it's ignorant or not. But that's, out of wanting better or loving you, whatever it is. So anyway, I think that it's meant to be well, but it does shape kids, because I think kids can be mean to one another. So anyway.
If I may, and not to argue or take a completely alternative perspective on what has been said, but I do want you to have an inkling of something completely different. That the psychology of competition can be taught to be not personal, not human to human. My father taught me. I was never in competition, musically or in sports, with any single individual. I was in competition with the concept of doing something perfectly, whether it's running a perfect football pattern, whether it's playing a piece of music perfectly from memory. I'm striving for the ideal. That's my competition. Now, what's really interesting is it's only recently that I've realized I put that same thing in my sons. They don't compete with humans. They compete with ideals. In fact, they struggle at trying to compete with ideals because social media would take them in a completely different direction.
Yeah.
So just a different perspective.
And that's to my point, Mark, having said that, that's part of your shape. That's how you were shaped. And that works. And, there's just so much. But also, you did that. How do they say we parent like we were parented? That's not always true, but,
of course,
it worked for your kids. Yeah.
Not everybody has parents. Not everybody has a relationship with parents, and so on.
Yeah.
But there is something else about the psychology of competition. It is literally steeped in tribal origins.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yep.
the strongest survive.
Survive. Yep.
The strongest become the leaders.
That's our human nature.
That's human nature.
Yeah.
And so it's only in the last century that, people like Franklin got through to a segment of population and we started believing differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that's not to say it isn't still rampant, because you can look at any professional or amateur sports team and you'll see egos and pride on display.
Yeah.
And Mark, I think you just hit a very important topic because, to your point, it can be very healthy, but if you become too ambitious, that pride is gonna go high, and then that is dangerous because, the bar can go as high as your imagination goes, right? And then imagine we can live either struggling or striving. And that's the part that I feel like it's important that we support and then we think, because of course we all want to do our best. Who doesn't? It's not that we shouldn't be looking for like what is the best that I can do today, and we should all look for that. But we are humans and we are going to make mistakes, and we have to learn that that's okay. We have to learn with our mistakes. But when we are too prideful, or whenever we do not have simplicity, we just keep raising the bar high and high and high, and then we get depressed or we get frustrated, and then.
And for those of you who've worked in business, if you understand the psychology of sales quotas.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's all ego.
So again, I have 4 pages of notes, but as I'm going and I'm reading the again, selfishness is huge in pride. So it has people power struggle, always needing to be right, the need to be self-fulfilling, your ego, fear of something that is going to happen. So it's rooted in fear and anxiety. Then it says family dynamics have been played out unconsciously with us, and it manifests in different symptoms, features. And I was telling Regina that I was trying to connect it also, the presentation, into the challenges people have physically, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And this is the one that came to my mind, is that even people that are humble, there's a body language that isn't threatening, that you see, that's soft. And there's folks that are prideful, and you can tell in their body language, in their tone of voice, exactly, in their tone of voice, in their choice of words. There's just in their energy. I'm preaching to the choir, but so I tried where I could to put that in there.
Somewhere, just a quick story, somewhere in my 20s, married but the first time to a woman that was 4'11". She pushed my button one day and I stood up, and she looked up, and she looked up at me and she goes, "Really?" Okay.
I was just kidding.
but
There you go.
just that instantaneous, monstrous effort to stand and tower over her. Oh my gosh.
Mhm. Yeah, being big. Anyway, that's what came to my mind. So every once in a while, I have some of those notes on there. But anyway, go ahead, Kiki. If anyone has the right to be proud, it must be God. After all, he created the world without any help from you or me. He himself is uncreated, eternal, and utterly faultless. He himself dwells in the unapproachable light. He is mighty, glorious, perfect in beauty and splendor. Omniscient, no one and nothing can compare to him. He is the only one qualified to be proud, and yet he is humble. Isn't that awesome? It's so true. So, okay, Miss Kiki. Pride, the greatest plague of humanity. Pride is what leads to hatred, envy, lust, murder, and all things that place the importance of self ahead of all else. Pride has several faces. It can be seen in selfishness with attitudes like, how will this affect me? It is visible in disobedience as a power struggle against authority, no matter if it be a parent, teacher, boss, or ultimately God. A proud person hates the fact that someone is above one. One thinks this lowers one's position. Pride has many symptoms and features. The difficult thing about it is that it's so hard to see yourself in it. You see in oneself. Often the people who hate pride the most in others are the ones who are the proudest of themselves. Yeah, that is so true. So, let's see. Let me see if it's on this. Because I wanted to say that one of my notes I have, it says that pride obscures all truth from us. And people try to defend themselves all the time, very hard to defend themselves when they don't even know that they're doing this consciously sometimes or egotistically, and they admitting their faults, which is difficult, but it's also the opposite of pride. So, all right. Okay, you can go to the next slide. It is only by rigorous examination of our thoughts and actions that we can hope to reform. How can the proud individual submit to such an analysis? Since the person is careful to avoid those who might enlighten one, of all people, one is the last to know oneself. Amazed with one's personality, nothing can open one's eyes. That's true. Pride obscures all truth from us. In order for the study of the universe and its laws to be fruitful, simplicity, sincerity, and straightforwardness of heart and mind are necessary. Above all of these qualities are known to the proud people. Any comments on that?
I think that to these, I always like to remember about the suggestion that St. Augustine gave to us to do the nightly review, because that's okay, we might not be able to see, but if we are truly open to look more of who we are and what we do, if we ask to our mentors, what am I doing wrong? Whenever we are thinking, the answer will come to us, or thoughts, or in time, or in form of scenarios that we see. One thing that happened to me lately, and it was amazing that happened because it just showed me how prideful I was and I wanted to fight so much, is because I noticed myself fighting with the person mentally. So I was washing the dishes, just talking with the person, saying, hey, why do you think that you're doing this? This is not right, this is not fair, blah blah blah. And I was like, whoop, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm fighting with the person. And then that's okay. And then after a couple of hours, I catch myself again talking about the thing. This is already something telling me you are not letting this situation go. Stop and reflect. And then I started reflecting. I was, oh, okay, now I see where I am being prideful. So we have tools and we have all the great examples that teach us how to look to ourselves. Also, I remember about St. Francis of Assisi, that he went through a great transformation in his life, and he kind of teaches us how to do that, right? So, of course, that we're not going to talk about his life right now, but I highly recommend that we revisit his story and think about how can we use this as an example to humble ourselves and look to who we are.
Yeah, that's true. I found a quote. I don't remember where I found it. I think in one of the books I have. And it says, true humility is not thinking less of yourself, rather thinking of yourself less. And I love that. Yeah. So I also wanted to add that a lot of what I've learned and what I've seen, especially in my job, is that if people attempt to be humble or compassionate, then you have another person thinking, they're kissing up, or they're trying to do this, or you think you're, just the criticism that comes with it. And it's almost like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, or you're prideful. So it can be difficult. And anyway, that was just my comment. Okay, you can go to the next slide. How many slides are we on? Never mind.
Oh,
I would like to interject a little bit here.
We have 8.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that it's extremely difficult to become humble. It would take a lot of practice to make yourself humble, because I didn't become humble until I was put in a situation where I lived in the Philippines, not because I wanted to, it was only because I had lost my passport and I had no choice. But then also seeing all the poor people over there, I mean, I'm not even rich or anything, but I was rich over there because I was able to eat meat. I was able to have someone go shopping for me downtown to the market over there every day. I'm pretty sure that some of you know how that is every day, living in a different country. So, and it took for me to give up, almost lose everything. And when I came back, I really felt bad that, man, I would get a Happy Meal and or something to eat, like a double cheeseburger, and I would think, man, I could buy a bunch of chicken and I could feed a family for 2 days with just this money right here. And so I think that really made me humble, because everyone told me I became humble. They're like, wow, Gus, you are really humble, because before I was the prideful guy, but I did, as the prideful guy, I did make an extremely a large amount of money. But as a person that is now humble, who I think I am humble, and I still have some tendencies of a little bit of pride, but the fact that I am being more aware of everything that's happening all the time makes me be able to live it easier in my life day to day. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I
that's
have
what we strive for, Gus, to become better every day and to look at our lives, to evaluate our lives, to get better and grow from. That's part of
Yeah, and I
growth.
think, that is a part of growth. And I think that sometimes, like going back to where the parents are speaking to their kids and everything like that, I think that's where it all starts. And I think
Mhm.
that's where the big problem is at. It's in our family. It's in the very beginning of life, and how to be able to show your kids. And I don't have any kids, just so you know. So, but I believe that I would be a really good father, to show your kids the right way of being, and it's being who you are, being who we really are, and we just really are loving souls. And believe me, I would not 10 years, 20 years, I would never have said this, okay? But I realized that during all my years of troubles and everything, I'm 57. There was even a point you guys don't even know. You guys don't even know that I was even looking at going away for 10 years in prison, okay? You don't know that I was the kid that stabbed his fifth grade teacher. I was a very troubled kid. I grew up a lot, but God was with me each and every moment. And I realized that in 1999. So that's my little testimonial because I've done a lot and everything, and I've traveled all over the world, and I've seen a lot of things and everything. And when you live in the Philippines and you don't have any toilet paper, that's a really big, big thing to live with.
That's a rich man's pleasure right there, huh?
Yeah, and what temperature water too? No warm water.
Well, Gus, I'm just going to say this. The orphanages is full of youngsters who would love to have you as a mentor or a daddy. Anytime you get lonely, think about those kids.
Yeah.
And one thing that's one reason why I like working at the nonprofit organization, because I was able to help out so many people because I have a lot of knowledge. So
Yeah. That helps, and that's from the heart. So this is not till a later slide, Kiki, but the slide, I guess we'll wait till we get there, because there's a slide that says how to overcome your pride and humility, and pride and be humble. There it is.
That's an excellent, sister. Yeah.
So we can practice humility. Humility in action combats pride. Pride is our nature, and humility is something that we must learn. And that's just what you said, Gus. Humility is not a trait that comes naturally. Therefore, humility must be a conscious choice that we integrate in our daily attempts to improve the way that we live our lives. And what does it say? No one ever choked to death swallowing their pride. I like that. So that it's not, we have to learn to be humble. There's a list that I put on how we can practice humility. So I'll go through them real fast. Relinquish selfishness. I think that is a lack of self-esteem. Practice compassion for others. Learn how to be compassionate. Accept constructive criticism so that you may be able to admit that you are wrong. Accept feedback. And your pride can be overcome by having the courage to go deep inside and willing to be courageous enough to make the changes. Practice gratitude. Release entitlement. Discovering that we have the own ability to heal ourselves by finding ourselves with God, and God is in us, who's a great spiritual physician who helps us gain insight, gives us the strength to change our thinking, therefore changing our behaviors, changing the symptoms of pride. We can ask God our Father to be rescued from it all by simply being humble and accepting his help. So there you go. All right.
I like that too.
Nobody what? You cut out, Gina.
I said, I like that too. No one ever choked to death swallowing their pride.
All right. Okay. So the hot dog says, I am awesome. See, it's laying there. Appreciate your talents. Being humble does not mean that you can't feel good about yourself. Self-esteem is not the same as pride. Yes. Conduct an honest evaluation of yourself. Honesty with yourself is the best policy. If you know you are weak in a certain area, your enemies will not be able to have that power over you. Yeah, because you admit it. So there. Understand your limitations. No matter how talented you are, there is almost always someone who can do something better than you. Recognize your own faults. We judge others because it's a lot easier than looking at our own faults, but it's also unproductive and harmful. Stop comparing. Why? Because it's just about impossible to be humble when you're striving to be the best or trying to be better than someone else. And that's just what we were talking about in the beginning. about comparing, competing. I know Mark was mentioning about that, the competition portion in our minds. So, let's see. All right. I'm not going to read that. Go ahead.
This is another slide already. They're just
Okay.
very simple.
All right. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Never be afraid to admit that you made a mistake. Part of being humble is to understand that you will make mistakes. Don't be afraid to defer to others' judgment. It's easy to acknowledge that you make mistakes and that you're not always right. Did I read that correct? Somewhat more difficult, however, it is the ability to acknowledge that in many cases, other people, even people who disagree with you, they may be right. Appreciate the talents and qualities of others. Challenge yourself to look at others and appreciate the things they can do, and more generally, to appreciate people for who they are. Seek guidance. Contemplate moral text and proverbs about humility. Pray for it, meditate on it, and do whatever it takes to get your attention off of yourself. Here you go. But I think the attention portion is different than, obviously, than the deep exploration of yourself, of who you are and how you are, so to make the changes. Okay, go ahead, Miss Kiki. Think about yourself under different circumstances. Much of what we give ourselves credit for is actually a product of luck. Help others. A big part of being humble is respecting others, helping them. Treat other people as equals and help them because it is the right thing to do. It's been said that when you can help others who cannot possibly help you in return, you have learned humility. Remain teachable. Find people you aspire to be like in certain areas and ask them to mentor you. An intractable spirit is a proud spirit, which is the opposite of humility. Practice gentleness. Gentleness of spirit is the sure path to humility. Whenever possible, when faced with conflict, absorb the venom from others' attacks and retract with gentleness and respect. Now, how easy can that be? So, go ahead, Kiki.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I just felt like that first block, whatever you call it up there, think about yourself under different circumstances. You know, it seems kind of counter to what I feel like I've learned in Spiritism, where it says, much of what we give ourselves credit for is actually a product of luck. I don't know, that kind of like sounds like chance, and we know nothing is by a chance. So, and we're never alone. So I think for me, it works better to remind myself that I am never alone, and that, the benefactors, because I have actually found myself recently doing that, thinking like, catching myself and reminding myself that, it isn't the great I doing this, and, just to remind myself that there are actually, a lot of benefactors around, and, spirits that care about me and that are protecting me and watching out for me. And then also, that, for things to happen, because, I have to look at good and bad, that it's, when we talk about giving ourselves credit for, for me, I mostly think that is a positive, but it can also be a negative, blaming myself for things that, oh, how stupid am I? Or, and, I don't know. I just, what I learned in the Spiritist literature is that, there's a lot of like a lot of chain reactions, a lot of cause and effects that happen when things do happen. It's not just, so black and white as it may appear. So I guess the basic point I wanted to share is just the whole idea that I'm never alone, and it's, I'm never working in isolation. And also that, I don't think that it's a matter of luck or by chance. I really don't. I think there's that the idea of the merit seems more appropriate to me than the idea of luck or chance. So I just wanted to share that. That seemed like a kind of
Since
counter to spiritism.
I think since the topic is we're talking about pride, and that we give ourselves credit, I think does refer to the pride, but maybe the word that actually is a product of luck. Maybe that sentence itself, a product of luck. I can see where you say that, but I think maybe that was the wrong choice of word. But I do see where it says, that's again, like if you're what you're saying, it's like, if you are having guidance and what have you, but you're giving your own self credit for it, and again, that goes back to the pride. Maybe the word of the product of luck isn't the right words. I don't know.
Right. But exactly right. I agree with what you're saying. And, I can also look at this. I just had another thought come to me that, I can have this tendency to overrate myself, to think I'm better than I am. And that's the pride, right? But I can also have a reverse pride and think I'm worse than I am, and that's a reverse type of pride, because it's still that self-centered, even though it's in a kind of reverse way, but it still is not kind of reality. And that's one of the definitions I learned early on, that humility is seeing things the way they are, instead of how I want to see them or how I want them to be, but to see them the way they are, and accepting life on life's terms. So
I think
that was just definitions that I learned early on. But no, I think we're saying we're in agreement. But that just occurred to me because I know I've been so guilty of that, like even today, I have an example. So I went in to see this patient in a room, and I'm thinking, oh God, I know exactly. So I'm a physical therapist, right? So I'm thinking, I'm knowing exactly what is wrong with this person and what needs to happen. And I just have to go tell this therapist, the head therapist that works in that area, what she needs to do. And I had in my mind about this piece of equipment. They need to have it in there. He needs to get doing this equipment right away. So I had to go get some other equipment. I get back to the room, and here I notice I didn't even look. The equipment was already in the room. The patient is already using it. And it just really and thank God I didn't have a chance to see that other therapist to say anything, and that's an example of, that was not a product of luck. I really think thank God I just didn't get the opportunity, to put my foot in my mouth, so that's a prime example right there, of just, and I have to say it. I recognized it right away. I was like, oh, here you are thinking you're so, great or whatever.
Good
And
job,
they were like,
Teresa. Good job.
Well, and I think if you think that, people, if they think they're superior or better than or whatever it is, your cup is full. So how is your space? There's not any space for you to add or put anything more in there because you know everything. So, I think you stay stuck because you lose the opportunity on your own to grow. You lose the opportunity to grow.
Oh, absolutely. But I would say in that one particular area, but overall, I don't see myself as being with a full cup. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's just some people are like that. In fact, I know a few. Mark, what are you laughing at?
Well, I think Joanna Angelis talks about that in the beginning of Happy Life, that so she tells the story of someone that goes to see a teacher, and the guy's pouring, and then the liquid is pouring out over the cup, and he's like, hey, what are you doing? The cup's already full. And he says, well, just like you, if you don't make room there, you can't put more in. You
Yeah.
have to make room for the
Yeah,
new or whatever. Thank you.
And then the other thing that I just wanted to add to this, and I agree with what you both said, and I also believe that this was poor choice of word for luck.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I think it's also important in this topic is to think about ourselves under different circumstances, because sometimes whenever we encounter someone that is struggling with something that we have had the same or similar experience in the past and we had overcome, we feel like the person has to overcome as well because you did it, and you are not the person, you are not in the same circumstances. So we should be very, very careful, because it's not because we overcame that the other person can overcome as well. Therefore, we have to be very careful for us not to harm the other person with our pride, to say, sharing our own experiences in terms of, when I was going through this, I did this, I did that, and I succeed, so you have to do the same.
Mm-hmm.
We should never do that. So I think it's important that we understand ourselves into different circumstances, because gladly, to your point, Teresa, we are surrounded by benefactors of good that are always supporting us, and if we are in tune, we are able to understand and to take advantage of that. But if for whatever reason we are struggling and we are not able to stay in tune and we can't hear our mentors or the guidance, we might struggle much more.
Yeah. Thank you, both of you. Anybody else? We're good. I already read that one. The next slide. Okay, so the advantages of being humble. Keep in mind that being humble has many benefits. Humility can help you be more content in your life or with your life. It can also help you endure bad times and improve your relationship with others. It's also essential to be an effective learner. If you think you know it all, you won't be open-minded enough to seek out new knowledge. That's the cup being full. Humility is also somewhat counterintuitively an excellent tool for self-development in general. After all, if you feel superior, you have no incentive to improve. Very true. Most of all, being humble allows you to be honest with yourself. The greatest lesson on humility. Jesus washes the disciples' feet. It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that he was wrapped around him. When he had finished washing their feet, he said, "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him." That's beautiful. Anybody, anything?
I'll let you wash my feet, Sonia.
All right. I did my dad's today. Come on down. Okay. The truth and everlasting strength of mankind is found in submission to the will of God, humility and pride. I can't see that. The perpetual weakness of the natural man is seeking satisfaction in, I don't know what the above others, seeking ascent. What does that say?
Ascending above others.
Ascending above others. Okay. Is that the last slide, Kiki? Not yet? Oh, it is, huh? That is the last slide, isn't it? Spiritism for everyone.
Yeah, that's the last
Participation.
one.
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah, I did it. What I wanted to say, I didn't even time myself, Lord. What what I wanted to say is when I was doing this, I ran across the notes. In fact, I have it here. The exercise that you did with us on June 15th, Kiki, do you remember that? The one that you pulled from the, I don't know where, that we did an exercise.
I think it was the mentor that suggested that to us.
Yeah. And then, so what my notes is in many ways, it gave food for thought by challenging each one of us to admit what can or we are willing to do to change ourselves within ourselves. So that's what, because I was looking at the notes and what I wrote myself. So, and actually, and that takes humility to be able to do that. Anyway, I'm done.
You know, I have a question. Can you go back one slide, the last one about, yes, that one. So the perpetual weakness of the natural man is seeking satisfaction in ascending above others.
Mhm.
So I thought that other slide said you're still being prideful if you're like comparing yourself or trying to be better than other people. So I feel like, I don't know, maybe I'm not understanding what this is saying, but it seems like to me it's saying the opposite of what it just told us earlier.
I think that, so at the onset, it's our nature to be prideful because of who we are, how we're taught. For whatever reason, it's hard to be humble. It's difficult to be humble, which is something that has to be learned, like the slide said. But I think in this, what it says, we're weak just by naturally, and it's because it satisfies us, like we were saying about, you know, you're one up, you know more, you have to argue to be right, whatever those things are. And that for some people, they get satisfied with saying, like you were saying, right, I'm better than, or not that you're better than, but I'll fix this situation. Because I know for myself, for many years, and I still do it. And I believe that I do it for the good. So I'm very, very particular, and I strongly believe in resources for folks. I don't care who it is and what it is. And so I put a lot of effort and work in it, and I keep it and I share. So a lot of times my colleagues will come to me and ask me, do you have this? Do you know that? And that, I have to admit, it strokes my ego, because it's like there's something that I can not have and not know, and I'll go look for it. Because my rationale behind that is because it's going to help somebody in the long run. And the next time I don't have to look it up. I've been saying that to myself for a long time. And that's how I convinced myself, because I felt like not only did I help that family or that person, but also my colleague. And I have to say, for most of the time, I am the go-to person, because I save all this stuff. Because in my mind, like I said, you know, I cannot not know.
Oh.
But like I said,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think maybe I figured out. So that is just describing pride. It's not saying like how to overcome. Okay, that, all right. That's why I was seeing it as being counterintuitive and counter to what it was saying earlier.
Yeah.
And the other thing,
but it's just describing pride.
It's just describing pride. And the other thing that I also think too is, if we think about how we were at the very beginning of our creation, one thing that we had to do for us to survive was we had to be better, because we had to survive. So we had to kill for us to have our space. We had to kill for us to be able to eat this. So that's why it's natural for us to have this instinct of survival, which, by the way, is one of the God's law, the self-preservation, right? So that's why I think this is a natural weakness, and that's why I think this also connects to that slide that says it's natural that we have this weakness of always having to be good or to be best,
better,
whatever the point of reference is, if it's ourselves or if it's others. But humility is a divine virtue that we learn as we go. So
And
Yeah,
also,
so I think I realized what my error was, is I was thinking it was saying like how to overcome pride, but it's just saying this is prideful. So I get it. All right, sorry.
it was an error. It's a learning opportunity. But what I wanted to say was humility, for the most part, by others can be seen as a sign of weakness. And pride on the other one, it's praise, because it's like, oh, you're strong, you're smart, you're whatever it is. And unless you know the difference, then, it, like I said, it can be misinterpreted. So that's it. If anybody has any more questions, comments, Mark, I can't believe you don't have a comment.
Oh, I do. I would not be Mark and prideful if I didn't. So it was 2018 when I discovered Spiritism and BSH. And simultaneously, I started a new relationship. And that Spiritist woman was very clear that the number one challenge in our relationship would be my pride and ego. And she was absolutely right. But very shortly after we started our relationship, I decided to do a presentation on my pride and ego. And I haven't looked at it since then until today.
Look how far you've come.
Oh my God.
No, you have to understand that halfway through tonight's session, I started feeling like, ooh, another arrow. Everything.
At least you acknowledge it.
Well, the beauty is that while the pride and ego is still way out of control, there are elements of humility that have been learned.
Yeah. Well, and I have to say that maturity has a lot to do with it, because you have adults like my brother, that they just stay stuck. They stay stuck in, they're emotionally immature and don't have a clue. And, the other piece too is that I think people have to know themselves well enough to know their emotions, know their triggers, and that's looking into self. And, everybody else is wrong and you're right. Because it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of humility to do that.
I will end with this, as Teresa was struggling within her own mind back and forth. I found myself doing exactly the same thing. And the truth is, when I did that presentation in 2018, the presentation was titled American Pride and Its Impact. And I literally copped out by saying I was raised in America and in a prideful generation, and that's why I am this prideful, egotistical male that I am. And the truth is, 4 years later, that's not at all where I come from when I talk about my challenges with pride and ego. That's not at all where there's no, it's all me. And the harsh reality that my heart problems are directly related to that. And so the learning is definitely taking place. The humility shows up every now and then.
I
think every piece of this, you can connect it to the physical aspect, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, every part of it.
Absolutely.
So anybody else?
One last thought. Gina's heard me say this. I believe that the reason I am still with BSH is because y'all are my accountability partners. Y'all have this wonderful style of letting me know when I cross the line.
Regina will let you know in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah, and she doesn't have to say a word. I see
and
it.
Nobody says anything to her. That's the thing. No, who checks you, Regina?
But I'm starting to read the faces of others as well, and you guys are pretty telltale. Sunshine and I have laughed about this because she does the same thing. She looks for facial expressions in response to things she says.
And that's the body language piece. And body language is stronger than words. don't care what comes out of your mouth. If it doesn't fit, then it's not true. So
Mark, you're amazing.
Well, but Gina, when we have the discussions about we're all coming back, that's why I'm coming back. There's no question. That's why I'm coming back. I got work to do.
I got work to do.
we all do.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know you got work to do, then you better start over with the classes,
You
with
know,
the BSH book, with the gospel.
I have to say this little piece, even though it's a part of my presentation for the next one. When he was asking the master, well, how many reincarnations do we have to do in order to become perfect? And he says, do you see this tree? If for every leaf that's on the tree is a life. I'm like, he's like, I'm like, oh man, that's not the word I use, but I'm being nice. I said, what? Oh,